The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Highway 47 as Marcus wiped the grease from his hands onto an already stained rag. At 58 years old, his knees complained every time he stood up from working under a car, but he'd learned to ignore the protest. The small garage he ran barely kept the lights on, but it was honest work, and that meant something. His daughter Jasmine had called earlier asking for help with her college tuition. Again, Marcus had stared at the near-empty cash register and promised her he'd figure something out. He always did, even when he couldn't see how. The day had been slow, just an oil change and a brake job that paid enough to cover tomorrow's electricity bill. Marcus was about to close up when he heard the sputtering engine struggling down the road. A silver sedan lurched into his lot, steam rising from under the hood like a small volcano about to erupt. The driver's door opened and out stepped a woman who looked to be in her early 60s, her silver hair styled elegantly despite the obvious stress on her face. She wore a cream-colored blazer that spoke of boardrooms and important meetings, now wrinkled from hours behind the wheel. "I'm so sorry to bother you this late," she said, her voice carrying the refined accent of someone educated and well-traveled. "My car just started overheating about a mile back. I'm Catherine Richardson. I was trying to make it to the city before nightfall." Marcus noticed her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her phone. "Let me take a look, ma'am. Pop the hood for me." As steam billowed out, Marcus examined the engine with the careful attention of someone who'd spent 40 years understanding machines. The radiator hose had split clean through, and the engine was running dangerously hot. "How bad is it?" Catherine asked, worry deepening the lines around her eyes. Marcus stood up slowly, feeling every one of his 58 years in his lower back. "The radiator hose is gone, and you've lost most of your coolant. If you'd driven much further, you would have cracked the engine block. That would have meant thousands in repairs instead of hundreds." Catherine's face went pale. "I have an important meeting tomorrow morning at 9. A merger that's taken 6 months to negotiate. If I'm not there to sign those papers in person, the whole deal falls apart. Can you fix it?" Marcus glanced at his watch. It was already past 6. The parts store had closed an hour ago, and even if he could get the parts, this kind of repair would take him well into the night. "Ma'am, I won't lie to you. I don't have the parts here, and even if I did, we're looking at several hours of work. The cooling system needs to be completely flushed after running that hot, new hose installed, and then we have to make sure there's no warping in the engine block from the heat." "I'll pay whatever you need," Catherine said quickly. "I can call the parts store owner, explain the emergency. Surely they could open up for us." Marcus shook his head gently. "Old Joe who runs that store is in the hospital recovering from surgery. His son is managing things, and that boy keeps strict hours. There's no calling him back tonight." He saw the defeat in Catherine's eyes, the weight of responsibility that comes from having people depending on you. He recognized it because he carried that same weight every day. "But," Marcus continued, "I've got a '73 Chevy in the back that I'm parting out. The hose might fit if I modify it some. Won't be pretty, but it'll get you where you need to go." "Really?" Hope flickered across Catherine's face. "You'd do that? Let me see what I can make work." For the next 3 hours, Marcus worked under the flickering fluorescent lights of his garage. His knees ached from kneeling on the concrete, his fingers cramped from manipulating tools in tight spaces. But he worked steadily, carefully, the way his father had taught him when he was just a boy, learning that excellence wasn't about having the best tools or the finest materials. It was about taking pride in your work regardless of circumstances. Catherine sat on an old wooden stool near the garage entrance, making phone calls to reschedule her evening plans. Between calls, they talked. "You've been doing this a long time?" she asked. 40 years, Marcus replied, his voice slightly muffled from under the hood. "Started when I was 18, working for old Willie's garage across town. Saved up for 15 years to buy this place. That was 23 years ago now. Do you enjoy it?" Marcus paused, considering the question. "There are days when the bills pile up and I wonder if I made the right choice. My daughter's in college studying to be a doctor. Smart as a whip, that girl. But it's expensive, and I can only help so much. Sometimes I think about what life might have been like if I'd made different choices." He emerged from under the hood, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his arm. "But then I remember the first engine I ever rebuilt. I was 19 years old, and it was a '67 Mustang that everyone said was beyond saving. When I turned that key and heard it roar to life, I understood what it meant to bring something broken back to usefulness. There's dignity in that kind of work. Catherine nodded slowly. My father was a carpenter. He used to say that working with your hands keeps you connected to reality in a way that nothing else can. I'd forgotten that until just now. What do you do, if you don't mind my asking? Marcus went back to work, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. I run a foundation that helps small businesses, Catherine said. We provide microloans, mentorship, and resources to entrepreneurs who are trying to build something meaningful. Tomorrow's merger is with a larger investment group. If it goes through, we'll be able to expand our reach to help 10 times as many businesses across the state. Sounds like important work. It is, she said quietly. But somewhere along the way, I started focusing more on the spreadsheets and projections than on the actual people we're supposed to help. Sitting here tonight, watching you work with such care on a stranger's car when you clearly have your own struggles, it reminds me why I started this foundation in the first place. By 9:30, Marcus had the car running smoothly. He'd flushed the cooling system twice to be certain, checked every connection, and taken it for a test drive around the block. The repair wasn't dealership perfect, but it was solid work that would hold. How much do I owe you? Catherine asked, reaching for her purse. Marcus thought about Jasmine's tuition bill. He thought about his own electric bill and the rent due next week. A fair price for the parts and labor, especially emergency after-hours service, would be $400. He could charge even more and it would be justified. $50 for the parts, he said. The labor is on the house. Marcus, no, that's not right. You worked for hours. Ma'am, you've got an important meeting tomorrow that's going to help a lot of people. I've got a feeling you'll put that money to better use than I would. Besides, my daddy always told me that kindness has a way of circling back around when you need it most. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, truly. This is beyond generous. She handed him $300 before he could protest. The extra is for your daughter's education. A smart young woman studying to be a doctor deserves all the support she can get. Marcus tried to refuse, but Catherine insisted. Please, let me do this. You've given me more than a fixed car tonight. You've reminded me of something I'd lost. They shook hands, and Catherine drove off into the night, her car running smoothly under the stars. The next morning, Marcus opened the garage at his usual time. The coffee was brewing, and he was looking over an estimate for a transmission job when he heard the vehicles approaching. Not one vehicle, many. He stepped outside and stopped in his tracks. 12 black SUVs were pulling into his lot and the street beyond, moving with the coordinated precision of a practiced convoy. Catherine stepped out of the lead vehicle, but she wasn't alone. With her came men and women in business suits, several people carrying clipboards and cameras, and a news crew. Marcus, Catherine said, walking up with a warm smile, I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Ma'am, what's all this? After I left last night, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. About dignity in work, about bringing broken things back to usefulness. This morning, before my merger meeting, I made some calls. She gestured to the people gathering around. These are contractors, business consultants, and representatives from my foundation. We're going to renovate your garage, upgrade your equipment, and set up a scholarship program in your name for children of mechanics and tradespeople who want to pursue higher education. Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. I don't understand. You gave me something precious last night when you had every reason not to. You showed me that the work we do matters less than how we do it and who we help along the way. My merger went through this morning, and the first project we're funding is right here. A man in a hard hat approached. Mr. Thompson, we'd like to expand your garage, install new lifts, update your diagnostic equipment, and help you hire 2 apprentices. We've also arranged for a regular contract with several local dealerships to handle their overflow work. But why? Marcus asked, his voice rough with emotion. Catherine took his hand gently. Because last night you gave when you had every reason to hold back. Because you saw someone in need and helped without calculating what you'd get in return. Because the world needs more people like you, and we need to support them when we find them. She turned to address the news camera. "This is what my foundation is about. Not just providing money, but recognizing excellence and character in ordinary people doing extraordinary things." Marcus Thompson represents the very best of what small business owners can be, and we're honored to invest in his future. Over the next 3 months, Marcus watched his small garage transform. The new equipment meant he could take on more complex jobs. The apprentices, 2 young people from difficult backgrounds, brought energy and hope into the workspace. The dealership contracts provided steady income that meant he could pay Jasmine's tuition without worry and still have enough left over to save for the first time in years. But more than the physical changes, something shifted in Marcus himself. He began mentoring his apprentices with the same patience his father had shown him, passing on not just technical skills but the wisdom that comes from a life spent in honest work. Catherine visited regularly, and they formed an unlikely friendship built on mutual respect and shared values. Her foundation featured Marcus in their promotional materials, and soon he was speaking at local schools about the dignity of skilled trades. One evening, as Marcus locked up the newly renovated garage, he stood for a moment looking at the sign above the door. It still bore his name, but now there was something added beneath it, a quote he'd chosen himself. "Excellence isn't about what you have, but what you do with it." His phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. She'd aced her anatomy exam and wanted to thank him for always believing in her. Marcus smiled, thinking about that hot evening months ago when a stranger's broken-down car had seemed like just another problem in a life full of them. His daddy had been right all along. Kindness did circle back around, sometimes in ways you could never imagine. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us of the goodness still present in our world. Leave a comment below telling us about a time when a stranger's kindness changed your day. Your story might inspire someone else to reach out and help when the opportunity comes.